Hello everyone, welcome back to Take the Snap. I'm JJ, and today we will be talking about the latest news around the NFL, important games for Week 18, and more. Let's get started. Dolphins outside linebacker Bradley Chubb has torn his ACL. He will be out for the remainder of the 2023 NFL season. Bradley Chubb, he is a very good linebacker. He is an important piece of this Dolphins defense, and he's now out and tore his ACL. That is a huge loss for the Dolphins, and I think that will not help them very much. Tua Tagovailoa has also suffered a shoulder injury, but he is expected to play versus the Bills.
Speaking of that game is a huge one, the Bills-Dolphins game. If the Bills win, they win the AFC East and get the number 2 AFC seed. But if the Bills lose and the Steelers and Jaguars win, then the Bills will miss the playoffs. There are also some other scenarios that can get the Bills the 6th or the 7th seed. I think the Bills will lose this game, but I still think they're a very elite team. And if they do make the playoffs, that team should be careful, because the Bills, they've shown that they can compete with Kansas City or Cincinnati. So I think that the Bills will lose this game, but I think if they make the playoffs, the team should be washing out. Running back Dalvin Cook and the Jets have mutually agreed to part ways. So the Dalvin Cook can go to any team after he clears waivers. And I think that he probably wants to go to a contender and try to win the Super Bowl with them. So Dalvin Cook, he used to be on the Vikings. Now he was on the Jets. But like I just said, they are parting ways. So now he will probably join a contender like I said before. And the Jets, they play the Patriots in a game that means absolutely nothing. They're both eliminated from playoff contention. All it does is give the loser a better seed. But for the Jets fans, you can look to next year where Aaron Rodgers will be returned. So you have that to look forward to. The Patriots side of things, the head coach, Bill Belichick, who is very much on the hot seat, has said that he's focusing on the season finale versus the Jets, not on his future in New England. I think personally he will get fired. I think because of his drafting decisions. This is nothing against his coaching. It's just because he makes the draft picks, and the draft picks have been pretty bad the last couple of years. I think that Bill Belichick, the GM, is bad, and that's why I think he should get fired. But Bill Belichick, the coach, is really good. But I think they will fire Bill Belichick. The Ravens have clinched the number 1 seed in the AFC after mauling the Dolphins. And I think that they should rest their starters for their game against the Steelers. They have nothing to play for. They've clinched the number 1 seed. You don't want to risk Lamar Jackson getting hurt, because you've seen what happens in the playoffs when they're very banged up. We saw that last season. So I think that's what the Baltimore situation is. They should just rest their starters. John Harbaugh has not said if he's going to rest his starters yet, but I think they should, and I think they probably will. The Steelers side of that game, we have some major drama here. Mike Tomlin has chosen to start Mason Rudolph over a healthy Kenny Pickett in Week 18. And there are rumors saying Kenny Pickett does not want to suit up if he is going to be quarterback 2 or the backup quarterback. But Kenny Pickett has said that he never said that and that nothing like that ever happened. So let's see what Mason Rudolph can do. The Steelers can make the playoffs with a win against the Ravens, and if the Bills lose to the Dolphins, or if the Steelers win and the Jaguars lose or tie the Titans, or if the Steelers win and the Texans and Colts tie, or if the Steelers tie and the Jaguars lose to the Titans and the Texans and Colts does not end in a tie, or if the Jaguars lose to the Titans and the Broncos win against the Raiders and the Texans and Colts does not end in a tie. That is assuming that the Steelers lose. The Browns have clinched a playoff spot after a win versus the Jets last week on Thursday, and I don't know what to say here. The Browns, they should just rest their starters against the Bengals, who have Jake Browning at quarterback. They did lose last week in a close game against the Chiefs. There's no major headlines going into this game or from last week, so we'll just move on to the 9-7 Jaguars, who take on the Titans this week, which is a very big game for them. Trevor Lawrence has a shoulder injury. He did not play last week. CJ Beathard took over, and they ended up winning 26-0. He's questionable for this game, and The Jaguars, if they lose this game, then they will not win the division. The winner of Texans-Colts will. So they're all 9-7, Colts, Texans, and Jaguars. But the Jaguars have swept both the Texans and the Colts in the divisional play. So if the Jaguars win this game, they win the division. But if they lose this game, well, then they will not win the division. On the Titans side, Will Levis is questionable with a foot injury. If he does not play, then Ryan Tannehill will get the start. And I think that Ryan Tannehill, he's a very capable backup. He was the starting quarterback at the beginning of the season. But I think that the Titans, they have a chance, especially if Trevor Lawrence isn't playing. The Titans don't have anything to play for, but I think they would love to ruin the Jaguars' division chance. I think they would love that. Speaking of the division chances, the Colts and the Texans take on each other in Indianapolis. And if the Jaguars lose, the winner of that game will win the division. They're both 9-7. There's not a lot of major news or headlines going into this game. The Chiefs, who clinched the division with a win. This is their 9th straight season in the playoffs. They will not be getting the 1 seed. But I think that this team in the playoffs, even though they're not playing as good as past years, Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, that's still terrifying. Nobody wants to go and take on Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. And I think that the Chiefs, they can make a deep playoff push. There's not a whole lot of headlines surrounding this game either. So let's move on to the Broncos. Jarrett Stidham will be getting his second start in a row against the Raiders. I think that this basically means Russell Wilson's time in Denver is done. They just don't want Russell Wilson to get injured, and they don't want to have him to owe more money. So this basically is signaling that Russell Wilson and Denver are going to be done. And in the Raiders' case, they did get eliminated from playoff contention. O'Connell will start. There's not a lot of major headlines. So let's move on to the Chargers, who are going to take on the Chiefs this week. I think the Chiefs will probably win. Easton Stick will be in. So, yeah, that's that. Now let's move on to the NFC. Cowboys, they are looking to win the division as they take on Commanders. The Commanders, they're just looking to get a better draft position. I think that the Cowboys will win this game pretty easily. And I think the Cowboys will win the division. Let's move on to the team they're contending with, the Eagles. The Eagles, they dropped a devastating loss to the Cardinals, actually, which definitely brought down morale. The Eagles, their defense does not look very good. There isn't a lot of major headlines, but still, the main one is the Eagles are not looking very good. They're not looking like the same Super Bowl team. Let's see if they can get back on track versus the Giants. The Lions head coach, Dan Campbell, is saying he has controlled fury going into the Week 18 matchup. They lost a very interesting matchup against the Cowboys last Saturday. They went for 2 to win it, and then the lineman reported eligible, but it was the wrong person, according to the refs. So then they got penalized for illegal touch because the lineman who caught the ball apparently didn't report eligible. And then the Lions still went for it, and then the Cowboys got penalized. So then they had to do it. They did it again, and then the Lions tried to get the 2-point, and they did not get it after the 3rd attempt. So they had a tough loss against the Cowboys, and we can see that they might be able to get the 2 seed still. They need to get back on track versus the Vikings, but that's the Lions situation. The Vikings, they have very slim playoff hopes going into Week 18 versus the Lions. They have not announced a starting quarterback for Week 18. The choices are Jaren Hall, Josh Dobbs, and Nick Mullins. I think they should go with Josh Dobbs solely because we've seen Josh Dobbs play well this season compared. We haven't seen much out of Nick Mullins or Jaren Hall. I hope they pick Josh Dobbs. Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings head coach, has made a decision but has not shared it publicly yet. He wanted to tell the team first. So that's the Vikings quarterback situation. The head coach said that they most likely not vest their starters because they have slim playoff hopes, but there's still playoff hopes. So that's the Vikings situation. The Packers win. They're in the playoffs after mauling the Vikings. And I think that the Packers, they're a very good team. There's not much headlines, but they mauled the Vikings 33-10. Jordan Love, I think he's the quarterback of the future for this franchise, and he's been playing with a lot of injuries around him this season, but he has persevered through. Now let's move on to the NFC South. The Buccaneers lost last week to the Saints. They take on the Panthers next week, which if they win, well then they will win the division. And I think that they can win this game. Baker Mayfield is playing amazingly well, and I think that the Buccaneers, they can just go out there, handle business against the worst team in football, and they should be fine. The Saints, on the other hand, Derek Carr is playing also really good. He's fully healthy now. That if they win and the Buccaneers lose, well then they will win the division. And they pick on the Falcons, who if they win and the Saints and Buccaneers lose, well then they will win the division. And the Falcons, they have some head coaching question marks, but those will be settled according to the owner in this final game, depending on what happens here. So the Falcons, although holding on to playoff chances are slim, they're still there. The 49ers take on the Rams in Week 18. Christian McCaffrey has a high calf strain. He will be out for this game, which is okay. He shouldn't be playing in this game. The 49ers have already clinched the number 1 seed in the NFC. The Rams have already clinched the playoffs, so this game is basically just for pride or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But the Seahawks are the other interesting team in the NFC West. They play the Cardinals, and they are currently the number 7 seed in the NFC. But if they win and the Packers win, the Packers will go to the playoffs. They need to win, and they need the Packers to lose to get into the playoffs. Pete Carroll's message to the team was, we just need to worry about winning, and we can see where the chips fall. That's all the news, headline, and talk around the NFL. I'm JJ. Thanks for listening to Take the Snap.